Hi everyone, today I'm going to talk to you about the scientific method. And our science experiment goes through a rigorous application of the entire scientific method. Now what is the scientific method, you may ask? It encompasses 7 different aspects: question, prediction, hypothesis, experiment, analysis, communicate and review, and publish findings. The first topic today is going to be question. So some questions you might think of asking are how, which, what, where, why, who, and you need to have these questions be measurable and observable. So one of our questions we had asked was more or less sugar, which is observable because we can see how much we're putting sugar into our liquid. We can also ask something like what will happen to the sugar once added to the water, because we can see the sugar being added and how it disappears once in the water. The next one is prediction. So a prediction means, and the definition stands for make known beforehand. So this is something that we can sort of predict before even starting our experiment. So this is what will happen. So we can sort of predict what will, meaning the future. So we know that candy is hard, as seen in the candies in front of us. So we can sort of predict that by adding sugar to the water, if we're planning on making rock candy, we can predict that the candy we're supposed to be making will be rock hard, or just hard. The next aspect will be the hypothesis. The hypothesis is pretty important when it comes to scientific findings and when we're collecting our data. So the hypothesis stands for creating or making an educated guess. And I found a sort of sentence that can help us out when creating a hypothesis. And it goes something like this: if I do blank, then this blank will happen. This sort of helps you set up your hypothesis. So in our example, our hypothesis could be, if I add the right amount of sugar to the liquid, then rock candy should happen. Now for the experiment. The experiment is when we get down to business. We need our materials, which Sarah mentions in her video prior to mine, and we need 7 days. During these 7 days, what are you doing, you may ask? You are collecting data. You can observe morning, afternoon, night, as you wish, but we are collecting data on what we see happening or even what we don't see happening. Either or are very important aspects to note. On to our analysis. Our analysis comes into play when we are finished our experiment. So after these 7 days, we are finally completed our whole science experiment. We can now discuss whether it was a success or a fail. We can now look back at our prediction and hypothesis and create new ones. We want to analyze our prediction and hypothesis to see, was it supported by our experiment or unsupported? Was it a success or a fail? If it was a fail, there is no big deal, because as Stuart Firestone says, failure is why science is so successful. Now to communicate and review our results. Once we've collected all our data and analyzed our data from our experiment, we can now communicate it with others. We can communicate it depending on our lesson. In our lesson, we would have our students be in groups of 3, so they can be observing 3 different jars of rock candy and come back together and communicate what each jar did. This is a way to have them collect more data and have more efficient and effective data, and then they can all compare, because all of them might not have the same findings. Some might have succeeded, like Sarah and Omar's, and some might have failed, like mine. So these different ways to communicate this could be through group discussions, worksheets, posters, or just talking with the class. And finally, we want to publish our findings. So some ways you can publish our findings are through having collected photos throughout the whole 7 days. We can share these photos and publish them in the class to demonstrate the procedure and what happened through these 7 days through our experiment. This is another way of collecting and showing our data. Another way we can publish our findings is writing a science journal. And a lot of times in schools, teachers organize science fairs. A science fair is a great way to explore and demonstrate and publish our findings, demonstrating if our hypothesis was supported or not supported, and if so, not supported, what was our new hypothesis. Now that you know a bit more about the scientific method, You now understand all of these were included in our science experiment to help students better create their own understanding of raw candy.